What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Raphael Rattler. We're back.
We are back. I mean, has anything happened since the last time I checked? The Pels were running it. They were getting after it. You know what I'm saying? They were at the top of the West. You know, they was getting it in since the last time we got to see your handsome face on here. So I'm sure a lot has changed, and we're gonna get into some of the things that have changed. But man, thank y'all so much for rocking with us. Life happens. If anybody has any life, you know that life happens. So, but I think we're good to go now, man. I'm excited to get back to it. Excited to talk Pels and talk, just the NBA in general, man. This in-season tournament is rolling. People fighting. They got a headlock. I thought we was watching NBA. Apparently, it's the UFC. Herb was out and now he's back. And it's just a lot going on, man. So, how's everything on your side, though, man?
Everything is blessed. I'm exhausted. I feel like I've been in the plane. I've been to different countries. Like, I am happy to be talking Pelicans and to be in the comfort of our own home. Before we get too far, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, on X, on IG, on TikTok, whatever social media handle you follow. That's NO Basketball, no E. Make sure you like the episode below and make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Orleans Basketball. Yeah, you're right. It's been a minute. A lot of things have happened. But first thing I want to talk about outside of Draymond just absolutely wild. I'm not even going to jump into that.
You know how bad it is for the entire NBA world to get on Rudy Gobert's side? Do you know how bad you have to be to make people sympathize with Rudy Gobert? That is tough. That's tough.
The same guy who licked the microphone, they're like, yeah, he was in the right. But the in-season tournament. So I watched a lot of the in-season. First of all, the red courts hurt my head. Man. It's hard to watch those games because my head. I don't know how you play on it, but all in all, the Pelicans had their second in-season tournament, their first home game. The Pelicans court, from the outside, looked better than most of the other color court. The blue ones aren't great either. I think the ones that are best are the gray, that are the closest to the normal. But let's talk about the East tournament from what you see, not only from the Pelicans' perspective, but from the NBA altogether. Do you think people are playing harder? Do you think people care? From the Pelicans' perspective, you saw them have a home and home with the Mavs. Herb doesn't play the first one because it's not an in-season tournament game, and he plays the second one. What do you think? Do you think this is something that's going to kind of stick in and people going to learn to enjoy it?
I think so, man. I'm enjoying it. Now, in all fairness, I don't know if players are playing harder per se. I just think it's the beginning of the season. People are relatively healthy. And it's everybody right now has an opportunity, right? Has a chance. And so I think people are playing hard, but I don't think it's because of the in-season tournament. Now, with that being said, I do think that there is buy-in from the players to participate in this tournament and to at least play relatively hard. I do think there is buy-in. You heard Damian Lillard make a comment about, he's playing for the guys that's at the end of his roster, with the two-way contracts and those assistant coaches and some of those guys and girls who, is this $500K is life-changing money, for those guys who are trying to make a way in things. And so, I think that there is a finite group of players that are, star players in particular that are playing for that. And I think there's another sector of players who are buying in because, listen, the more you buy into this, the more the NBA can sell this to the TV companies, the more money gets pumped into into the brand, the more those salaries go up. And I think that that's an incentive for everybody across the board to play hard, to put a good product on the board. I don't think we've seen I think Chet in Wemby was the first really blowout by 30 in-season tournament game. Other than that, you see some really competitive and close games. And so I think that there is buy-in from the stars to obviously some of the guys who don't make the $60 million contracts and things. So I think that there is buy-in, and as long as you have buy-in and as long as you're putting a good product on the floor, I think basketball sells itself, the NBA sells itself. It's entertaining. It's a lot of skill. And as long as you have buy-in from these guys, especially from the top stars, I think it'll be something that'll catch on. Again, the courts, I agree with you. Some of them, it's a lot. It's a lot going on. The runway strip in the middle that the NBA says that it's supposed to be a runway because the teams are going to Las Vegas for the finals. It's just a lot going on that you're trying to sell me. The groups, I heard Zach Lowe make a really good point that they probably should start just making the groups the divisions, because you can't remember who's in whose group and things like that. And so I think there is some tinkering that needs to happen with it. But all in all, the concept, I enjoy it a lot. And I enjoy that the NBA has gone out its way to make sure that this is an in-season tournament game. Now, change the colors of the courts a little bit, but I like the fact that when you turn on the television, that it's a different type of game being played.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, you talk about the court. I mean, Luka had comments about the court itself. The Mavericks can't even use their court because it's malfunctioned. So, like, I like what they're trying to do in terms of making it different. But to your point, I just think they're doing a little too much. Now, I would make the argument that the Pelicans also had a blowout win in a in-season tournament game over those same Dallas Mavericks. But the thing that I enjoyed the most about this whole thing is, man, the skeleton unis. That I feel like that's the first hit in a while for Pelicans. like everyone saw the black. It was like you saw BI on the squad. He was like, "Oh yeah, don't show none of them white ones. Like show only the black ones in the like those are finally like some unis like everybody can get behind." And like the way it clashed on the purple, I was like, okay, I can rock with this. But outside of that, I think this tournament would be fun. Again, I only think it will advance as years go on. The thing we need to talk about as things go on is there were a couple things said, from number one, Zion Williamson, and, very alarming. Again, anything Zion says is going to get blown up to the 9th degree. But when he come out and said that he's taking a back seat twice in back-to-back losses and back-to-back interviews, all of a sudden, I'm getting texts like, "Hey, is Zion getting traded?" I'm like, "Wait a minute, we just got past this conversation, and here we are again." But it brings up a good point. Like, obviously, he's frustrated, and I think some of that is, and he talked about it after last game, even in the win, is that he's not Zion right now, and like I don't think it was fair to expect him to be. He hasn't played basketball since January. Like he hasn't played consistently since January. And so for him, for a player who everyone talks about Bruce Force, but like Zion has so much game and so much skill to the way that he plays in terms of his touch around the rim, his angles, his finishes. You can't replicate that playing one-on-one versus Corey Brewer. Like you cannot replicate that in 3-on-3s. Like you got to be in the moment. And so I think as time goes on, again, B.I. and Zion just have such little chemistry, period, playing together, that when you're talking about two alpha personalities with everybody else that you got to get involved once those people are available, that's going to take some time to gel. And like really, if you look around the NBA, outside of Boston and Denver, nobody is like playing the best basketball of the year. Like it's a lot of, okay, let's figure this out. And that's kind of how the NBA worked. Like remember when the Heat, when it was the Heatles, when it was D-Wade, LeBron, and Bosh, they were like 9-8 in their first 17 games. Everyone's like, this is not going to work. And then they went to 4 straight championships. So like you kind of got to give it a little bit of time. But do you think it's the newness of the season? Do you think it's the newness of the offense and what James Borrego is trying to instill? Or do you think there's bigger issues at play? Because Willie Green also said in the preseason that he had put no plays in for Zion, like with like 4 days to go in the season. So where do you land on that spectrum?
A couple of things. First of all, I think it is a little bit of all of that. And what I mean by that is, so I've always said that the best attribute that a human can have is self-awareness. And I said, because if you don't have it, it is very obvious to everybody around you that you don't have it. And so to hear Zion come out and say, listen, I'm not me right now. I'm not where I want to be. And, because I think we can see it, right? Like Zion's bad games are still like really good, but a prime Zion game, that Minnesota game last season where there was just no hope for anybody in the arena at all to do anything. You remember right before he got hurt, the Philadelphia game, the Phoenix game, like the Denver game. Like you remember those games and you were like, that was Zion at his looks like obviously he's not even at the close to his prime, but peak Zion at that point in time. And you're watching Zion now, and I think this is the most ground bound he's been that we've seen him, right? Like he has those moments where you're like, yeah, there he is. But then there's a couple of times where you're like, man, there's some things his mind, my boss talks about this. His mind wants him to do things, and his body is like, not yet, almost, but not yet. And so I think that goes to a part of it, right? Like that goes to a little bit of it. Now, as far as the offense goes, it's a lot of things happening right now. It's a lot of things and I think, when people talk about, offense and defense, they think of it in a vacuum. Like, is the offense good? Are you giving the ball to Zion? Are you giving the ball to Brandon Ingram? And I think there's obviously some overlapping between BI and Zion. Like there just is going to be. They're not going to be the Shaq and Kobe fit. It's not going to be that because Brandon Ingram is not a three-point shooter. He's not a guy that is comfortable taking those threes. We've seen it. He's starting to get a little bit more comfortable, but it's still not his go-to shot. So there is some overlapping between the two. But those are things that people can get over. Those are things that people can work through. Also, there's a lot of firsts that are happening right now, right? It's the first time Brandon Ingram is being asked to be this point guard. It's the first time like Zion has been like fully healthy on the floor and you're not the point guard. Like we're not giving you the ball up front, right? We haven't seen this version of Zion fully healthy, locked in, and you're not getting the ball, as the primary ball, the ball handler. And then on top of that, James Borrego is coming in and he's instilling an offense. He's instilling some things. And then you have the perpetual rotation roundtable, right? Like CJ looked fantastic the games he played. I don't want to diminish what CJ's role has been in this offense, in this role this season. And for him to not be there it is a lot because that's somebody that's not like Jordan Hawkins where you plug him in and he's just catching and shoot. Like CJ is a big part of this offense. And so that you had that part at the beginning and then he goes down. And so now you're playing, roulette again with the starting lineup. You got games with Jeremiah Robinson Earl starting. You got games with Dyson starting. You got games where Jordan Hawkins is starting. And so it's a lot of and again, it's the life of the Pelicans, right? It's just what it is. The starting lineup for the Pelicans does not see the floor very often for very long stretches of time. It just is what it is. So when you throw all that, right, you throw all that into the gumbo and you stir, what you get is a clunky offense. You get guys trying to figure out, okay, should I give the ball here? Should I give the ball there? And it ends up with Zion, standing in the corner for that first Dallas game, which was just mind-boggling to see Zion in the corner for a lot of the game. And then my final point is that there is some alarming with the coaching staff. Like there is some things that I, for one, thought that we had gotten past this when Zion had the team number one in the West, that Zion is the ball handler. He is the alpha player. He is the Giannis. He is the bulldozer. Brandon Ingram can be a 1B at any point in time, right? At any point in time. And at spurts, he can be a 1A. But Brandon Ingram and his ability to knock down contested mid-range jumpers is not the same type of offense as Zion going down the floor with with the option to either score over you or, which we've seen Zion be a great passer and get to these shooters that the Pelicans have found another one in Jeremiah Robinson Earl. So there's something that's going on there where you have to figure out how to make Zion the focal point. Like I asked you this Sorry about that. I asked you this off the pod. Could you imagine if Giannis was like, yeah, I'm taking a back seat in this offense? Or like if you heard like Ja Morant taking it, or if and like that, like it just sounds weird coming from a guy who obviously is your best player. You're paying him to be your best player. And so it's just a lot. So I just think that, the whole across the board, there are things, it is circumstances. It is the rotation isn't all the way there. Everybody's not available. And I think that there is some things that Willie Green needs to look down and see that, point Brandon Ingram for as good as it is on paper and as good as his best attribute is scoring. And we ran through this last season with CJ. I said it last season. When you boil a player down to its fundamental elements, what are they best at doing? And Brandon Ingram, for as talented of a player, initiating offense and playing. Now, yesterday he had a fantastic game, or the last game he had a fantastic floor game. But on the average, he likes to score the ball and play basketball in his kind of way. And Zion is more adept at being a point guard or being that point forward or whatever you want to call it. And I think that that's where the offense should run through.
Sure. I think there's a couple things there, right? So a lot of people look at, well, Zion's turnovers have been really high. And so to give him the ball, and he's been struggling to some degree and turning the ball over, like, is it in the Pelicans' best interest to get him the ball? And so the thing I would counter with Brandon Ingram's turnovers are also very high right now. So for a player who, again, to their credit, and I mean, to Willie Green's credit to some degree, he hasn't had a whole lot of Zion. So from what he's seen, Brandon pulled him out the depths a year ago and got them to the playoff. Brandon was a player averaging 30 at the end of last season. Brandon's the player they haven't had to worry about, like, his conditioning and things like that. And so, like, he's leaning on that. I think it'll be one of those things, just like the rest of the NBA and all the other teams trying to figure it out right now, or as the season goes on, and as Zion gets his touch back, because it's funny that we're saying that, like, Zion's still having, like, I look at his stats, I'm like, man, he's not playing that well, and he's still shooting like over 50%. He's still averaging 20, still averaging 5. We're saying that, but we said the same thing to start last season, and the Pelicans were blowing people out before injuries happened yet again. And it wasn't until around that December, January point when Zion got going, they're like, oh, there's Zion. I think it'll be a similar like thing where you lean on Brandon and Zion, maybe to like an equal facet right now. And then as the season goes on, Zion slowly grabs the reins. I think it'll be something along those lines. But altogether, to your point, everyone's learning each other. Everyone's learning a new system. Everyone's trying to figure out where to be effective, but also share the ball, but also be aggressive, but also like all to do those things. And right now is just kind of confusing right now. I think it's a lot of people trying to figure it out. And to your point, there's been no consistency in the lineups either. So you can't even figure people out from game to game because one person goes down, another person comes back, and so on and so forth. So the thing that I think was obvious in the last Dallas game is that this team, we've been screaming this team is a defensive team. While they're figuring out all this offensive crap, if they play the way that they should play, they should give themselves a chance every single game because they'll be great on defense. They'll be scrappy on defense. They'll be doing those things. And then you got Brandon Ingram and Zion on the other side. So they will figure it out. Like, they're not playing well, but they're still both averaging 20. So like in a good field goal percentage. So like they'll figure it out. But when you don't play good defense and your offense isn't where it needs to be, and you're missing 5 rotational players, that's when you lose 5 games in a row. And so my question is, like, what's wrong with the defense? Like, they are 19th in defensive rating, and this is after a great game versus the Mavericks because they were 23rd before that. Last year, they were 6th. They're 14th in deflection. Last year, they were 2nd. They're 17th in steal. Last year, they were 2nd. So, like, they're just not playing to their identity until you hope that they can string something together from the last performance and bring it in this next one, because you're absolutely going to need it versus the Nuggets. What is your take on, like, the Pelicans just not playing good defense? Just not at all. Like that's the most blatant way you could say it.
Yeah, I think last season, and I think we kind of touched on this right before the season started on one of our shows. We went into last season saying like, if the Pelicans could just be average defensively, right? And then they ended up being sixth. And I've always maintained the fact that I don't know if they're that high, but I also don't think that they were as bad as they were the year before. And I think that they were somewhere in the middle because when you start a lineup of CJ, Brandon Ingram, Zion, and Jonas Valanciunas, you're not going to be the 85 Bears. It's just not going to happen. All right. It's just not going to happen. As phenomenal players as they are, they have deficiencies on the defensive end. We've seen Zion have lazy blow-bys, right? We've seen CJ get blown by and then, posted up. We all know about the JV switch, right? And again, I don't think any of these guys are like, they are glaringly contributing to the defensive. I think JV has had some bright spots defensively. I think Zion has had some bright spots defensively. I think Brandon Ingram I think CJ has had some bright spots defensively, ripping people. But I think in the average, right, in the totality of it all, like if Herb is like not the only guy, but the guy out there fighting for his life on the defensive end, you're going to take a step back, right? Najee has been out. Jose has been out. A lot of the defenders has been out. Zion is coming back into form. We just talked about how he talked about how he's not in shape. So that and not back to where he is, like where he wants to be. That goes for both sides, right? Because Zion was a decent defender last season before he got here. We talked about how he was turning the corner as far as like that individual defense, right? Team defense is a totally different thing. But now, like he's getting blown by, it doesn't even take a lot to blow by him. And then you couple that with the fact that like Larry Nance has not been, the Larry Nance that we all know him, right? He's been dealing with his share of injuries to start the season, right? We thought that, he would last and then towards the end, you would start to see a little bit. But now those injury bugs are starting to creep up in the beginning of the season. And so you pair just all of those, missing players and guys not in the best shape, like to be really, I mean, obviously you had that great game last, but to be 19 with some of the things that we've seen as far as the defensive side of the ball, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but like it could be a lot worse because we've seen some things from the defensive side of the ball during these, especially during that loser streak. So I think again, I don't know if they'll ever get back to 6 because I just think that was one of those years where you catch lightning in a bottle and everything went right. There was a lot of shooting variance that went into some of that. But I don't think that they're as bad as they were the previous years or that you've even seen like up into this season. I think as guys get back, as guys get played into shape, the Pelicans have the length, as talking about wings, the bulldog guards and Jose and things. And, they have an opportunity to do some things on the perimeter. Rim protection is what it is. It's not there. It's not going to be there this season, apparently, until they make a move. It is not there. There is nobody to rim protect. It's just what it is. JV is not a rim protector. They brought in Jeremiah Robinson Earl. He's 6'7". Larry Nance is not. He's hurt, and EJ Liddell is in Birmingham. So it's just not going to happen. And Cody Zeller, God bless him. And so there's just not going to be there. So the perimeter is where the Pelicans are going to have to make their defensive chops. And I think as Najee comes back and gets into form, and Jose gets back, and even Trey, right? Trey is not the greatest defender, but he's tall, and and he can be another tall body to throw out there. I think they'll kind of level out towards average, but I think that's kind of where the Pelicans are as far as a defensive team goes.
That's fair. I totally disagree, though. I think that they could be a top 10 defense. Like, it's not just the ability. They haven't consistently like shown effort and played with energy and played with consistency and played with connectivity on the defensive end. It's just one-on-one, go get it, go stop, Luka by yourself, Dyson. Like, it's been stuff like that, and that's just not who they were last season. That it regardless of you getting blown by because you have a better offensive player in front of you, a lot of it's just effort, right? And if they have the athleticism, I always say defense is an effort thing. It's an effort thing, and obviously when you're a player like Herb, you know so much more about anticipating and angles and things like that. But most of the time, it's just, do you want it more than the person across from you? And you saw that in the Mavs game, and the Mavs are the number 2 offensive team in the league. So if you can do that to Luka and Kyrie, you should be able to do that to some of these other teams too. And so I think if you see a consistent run of effort from this team, like the thing that you saw last game with the Dyson and the Herb in the starting lineup, if they can hit enough three, that is hard. Like they had Herb guarding the center, Derek Lively, and like the Mavs didn't know what to do in that scenario. If you can do stuff like that, especially we get Trey, I think Trey can be a good defender. I think a lot of Trey's weaknesses in the past are similar to Jordan Hawkins. He would just get bullied because he wasn't big enough. And what did he do? He went to the gym and just started lifting a whole bunch. And so I think that he will be better on that end as well. And so if you've got all these athletes on the court, that's the whole idea of playing Zion at the 5. I got 5 people I can switch at any time, and we wing stop. And when we put our arms out, like it's crazy to watch that picture of the Pelicans when they've got 5 wings out there and all got their arms out. Like that's they got the Toronto Raptors top 5 from that situation. But it comes with consistent effort and energy. You mentioned the rotations. You mentioned the injuries. So far, Zion's missed 2 games. Brandon Ingram's missed 3 games. And that's like the least amount. CJ's missed 5. Hers missed 3. Najee's missed 9. Jose's missed all of them. Trey's missed all of them. Now, Jose did practice today, and he did practice in the contact. He said on the broadcast he should be coming back soon, so that's a good thing. Larry's practiced today, but Larry didn't do contact, so it might be a little while from him. And Trey said a week ago that he'll be back in 3 weeks, so you should be getting healthier. But, like, I know it's early in the season, but are you getting worried again, like, here we go again? Because
of course.
You look at the lot, and it's not like 2 or 3 guys. It's an entire rotation of players. And so, like, are you at that point where it's like they did everything they could to come in the season healthy, and they came in the season hurt?
Yeah, I tweeted about it. I mean, I said if you told me the lineup for expansion team was Jose, CJ, Herb, Trey, and Zion, and Najee is the 6th man. That's a decent team to win an NBA one NBA game, and all of those players were out for the Pelicans. I mean, damn it, the Willie Green didn't miss the damn game. So I mean, listen, it is what it is. I think that, you know, it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things. And, you know, it seems as though on one hand, you get, you know, the stars are out, but the role players are healthy. And then on the other hand, you know, you come into this season, like, all right, B.I.'s only missed 3 games. Zion's only missed 2. Oh, yeah, Trey Murphy hasn't played yet, and neither has Jose. Oh, yeah, CJ is out, and Larry Nance is also out, and you might not have Willie Green for a game. Like, it's give or take. And I just think that it is just one of those things that, like, you just have to bake into the season, right? Until you, and again, I'm not advocating for this, like, don't do this, but until, like, one of the injury-riddled players is no longer playing for the team, and you get a breath of fresh air from, like, another player, like Jordan Hawkins, right? Like, Jordan Hawkins came in, and you forget about injuries because he is lighting up the team. Like, right. If you got to get something like that in to like, change it. But I think it just is what it is. These guys, for whatever reason, you know, they just miss games. They get injured and things like that. And it's not anybody's fault, right? Like, nobody's. I think Zion's injuries was real, and I mean, you know, he had to sit out a game because he had a baby, and like those and things. The other game he missed was a back-to-back,
so he hasn't been injured
like
yet, so yeah,
right. So like, I think that those things happen, and you just have to bake those in. But Brandon Ingram, he missed his games, he was injured. Like, these guys are injured. Like, it's not like, hey, they're choosing to sit. I mean, everybody has every incentive, especially guys like Brandon Ingram, who has every incentive to play. So it's not like he's just sitting out because he wants to. They just get injured, and it just is what it is. And so, you know, I think is if like Zion has not gotten injured yet, he's played through, you know, his games and played through majority of them. I think if the Pelicans can just, you know, continue to avoid. I keep talking about avoiding the quarter, avoid the stretches, avoid the month where you lose 6, 7, 8 in a row, 9 in a row. Thank God they won this Dallas game, because, man, had they lost that game, and then also going into this very tough Denver game with Minnesota right behind them, and then Sacramento rolling in behind, I mean, you lost 10 in a row last year. You don't want to have that early in the season, especially. Right. So thank God they won that game. But I think if they can just continue, like your point, everybody's still kind of figuring themselves out. A lot of teams, we've already seen a major shakeup with the Clippers. The Suns haven't played their big three together yet. I mean, people are still figuring themselves out. And if the Pels can just keep their chin above water, until these guys come back and get in a rhythm. And I think it's coming. It's going to come. I think if they could just keep their chin above water until those guys come, they'll be all right. Because it looks like Zion is taking, games played very seriously. By all accounts, he wanted to play in that back-to-back, but the Pelicans just thought it was smarter to not do it. Brandon Ingram, we've seen him, those little injuries. Maybe they take 10 games instead of 5 to come back, but he came back with 3 games, 3 games, I'm out and I'm back in. So it seems like these guys are bought into playing the games. And I just think as long as they keep their chin above water till these guys get back and they get healthy, they should be all right.
Well, the thing that I still worry about after watching 11 games and the Pelicans be 5-6, it's like, do the Pelicans have a big problem?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Jonas has been really effective in some games where he's gotten the ball. And again, he's not aggressive enough consistently when he does get the ball. He fades away way too often. I'm like, Jonas, why are you fading away? But Larry Nance hasn't been effective. I said before the season, if Cody Zeller's in the rotation, you're probably not in a good spot. And they lost 5 in a row. So that's all you got on the roster.
Yeah.
And you just talked about JB's deficiency. I feel like something has to be done. You cannot go through this entire season when Cody Zeller is your backup 5 option because they've tried to play Zion at the 5. I just don't think, it's had its pluses and minuses. I just don't think that's what Zion is. At heart, I know he's a large human being, but at heart and who he is, he's more of a guard than he is a center. That's just who he is. And so to ask him to play like a guard, like Derek Lively was just standing over him like we used to do our little brother and get rebounds at the rim because Zion is 6'6" and Derek is 7 foot tall. So I think something has to be done from that perspective.
Well,
I don't know what they can do.
You saw what happened with the Clippers. The Clippers played Jokic. Plumlee got in Plumlee is out and Zubac got in foul trouble. Jokic completely destroyed them and they small ball 5. The next day, they told Indiana to buy out Daniel Tice, and Daniel Tice is coming in. So You see teams are saying okay, obviously this is not going to work and make a change. And I think the Pelicans need to be on that type of wave too.
And if you want to get out the West, you got to go through that guy. And I'm sorry, we watched Cody Zeller in the finals versus Jokic, and that didn't work. We also watched Bam Adebayo in the finals, and that didn't work. You don't have anyone even close to that defensively. So it'll be interesting. But I do want to talk about the bright spots. And funny enough, the bright spots so far this season have not been the stars. It's been the role players. We talked about Herb Jones, and we kind of laughed about it. Could he take that Mikal Bridges type jump in his next year? And you kind of see it happening. He has gotten better defense. Even Zion's I didn't know he could get better defensively, but he's gotten better defensively. But he's way more confident on the offensive end, shooting the ball, attacking the basket, looking for the foul. And you felt Herb Jones' energy when he's there, and you feel it when he's not there, right? So he's taking another step. Then go look at his twin on the bench, Dyson Daniels. Same type of thing. His confidence is through the roof offensively. We always talk about it's hard for young players who are not gifted offensively, but that's not they don't have a go-to move. They don't have a go-to thing. Jordan Hawkins' thing is he shoots 3-pointers. Or when guys come in the league like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they can do so many things, but there's not one thing they do great. It's important for young players to figure out, okay, I'm really good at executing this. I'm really good at doing this. Let me do those things, and every year I'm going to add something to the game. Well, Dyson was I'm going to go to the lab, and I got the little spin finger roll. I got the little spin push shot. He focused on those things and he's executing that at a really high level. Again, you just want him to be really good at a couple things, not trying to do too much on the offensive end, but then he's shooting the three-pointer confidently, even when he's not making them. Like, Dyson's hit some of the most critical threes so far this season, and it's been like late in the shot clock contested. And for a guy who struggles to shoot, that is showing you that he's just in a different level offense. So what do you think about the two defensive anchors to this team and what they've done so far this year?
The best thing I can say about Herb is that Herb made Dallas go into a zone last game. That's all you gotta say. I mean, Herb, I for one did not think that Herb could get. I thought that Herb was, because he was one of the older rookies or the older younger players on the team, you would see his ceiling very early, right? You would see him get to that point. He would push himself and he would hit his ceiling early. And I thought last season he played really well, especially towards the end of the season. And I was like, okay, this is it. Like, this is Herb. And we had these pie in the sky expectations of what he could do, right? I was 40% from the corner three, and could he, like you said, like your point was, take that Mikal Bridges leap. Well, Herb is like, all right, well, I hear all of that, and I'm going to like blow past all of that, because Herb is taking top of the key transition threes. Herb is catching the ball and he's not looking for Brandon Ingram. He's not looking for Zion. He is like, I got it. I'm taking the ball to the rim and scoring. And some of the plays that he makes defensively, it's like he's like Tyrese Halliburton's vision on defense. Like he just sees stuff, and I'm like, how did you know he was gonna do that? And that comes from film study, that comes from knowing your scouting report, that comes from just having some of it, right? Like we David Griffin always talked about Zion being touched by the hand of God. Like there is something ethereal about Herb Jones's defensive ability, and it's just one of those things. Like, if you have it, you have it, and if you don't, you don't. And he has it. So I am his ability to affect the game, like on both sides of the floor in very major ways, right? Like, this isn't a guy who's like, okay, he hit that three and like, oh, well, we'll just leave him. Like, Herb is like, no, you better come out here, because even if you don't guard me and I'm not shooting the three, I'm attacking the rim.
Screen versus the Maverick. Derek Lively went under the screen, and Herb just pulled up for three. I was like, oh no, and he splashed it, man. That's a different player.
Yeah, it's his growth on both sides of the floor. I tweeted about, this is what happens when you lock yourself in a gym for an entire summer and have to have your teammates pull you out of it to do anything. The results start to speak for themselves. And to Dyson, I mean, listen, this is a guy who had all the tools. They were all there last year. You saw him make defensive play. You saw him do some things on the offensive end, but then it would just kind of curl up because it was, I made one mistake. He talked about it in the preseason. And at media day, he said, I want to get rid of being timid after I make a mistake or things like that. Like, I'm full on, I need to be confident and aggressive and assertive. And he has, right? Those Fred Vincent tax dollars are at work, boy, because Dyson is hitting the three at a good clip. Nobody expects you to be JJ Redick. Nobody expects you to be Jordan Hawkins, but just hit it at a decent clip where you feel comfortable shooting the next one. Even if you miss, you say, okay, I hit the last two, or I hit one earlier that I can hit this, as opposed to just kind of curling up and being in yourself. He is too tall, too talented. And when you have that kind of passing, defense, and height on a player like Dyson, like on such a young player, you want to nurture that, right? You want to make sure that you get the best out of a player like that, because that is the prototypical guard that a lot of teams want, right? They want a guy to come in and run the offense, but they also don't want him to be a defensive liability. And you found it in Dyson Daniels. So he's done an admirable job stepping in. I think the best thing you can say about Dyson is he's been a star since he's like been placed in the starting lineup, that you never are like, Dyson is the reason we lost this game, or Dyson is the reason that run happened, or Dyson is the reason that he's been saving the Pelicans in some of the games.
That first Mavs game, he was the best player on the Pelicans team. Like, they got blown out by the Mavs, but Dyson had a great game. So you're absolutely right.
Yes, he was. Mm-hmm. And he had to guard Luka that game by himself. So listen, there is so much to like about Dyson, and when you got those two guys on the floor together, I mean, it is just tough to score around that, man. And I think that they have even more that they can do. If Herb is gonna, like, his confidence is this shot is gonna get there, I'm gonna hold him to a standard, because keep shooting it, keep getting them up, keep being aggressive, and there's no reason Herb can't get up to 14, 15 points a game, on a nightly basis.
Right. The other thing you got to look at is, like, look at the Pelicans two-way players. Like, it sucks that they've had to go to the two ways so early in the season, but James Robinson Earl, he fit in very well, right? Now, obviously, some of the games they haven't won, but not because he's played poorly. Matt Ryan, that's another guy. You saw him produce against the Pels last year, but he's coming and produce for the Pels as well. And then Darion Seaver, I'm sorry, but this might be the end for Kyra. Like, with those two on the court together, like, you see a confidence level in a player, Darion Seaver, who has way less experience than Kyra, coming out. Well, and on the flip side, Kyra, I just don't see it on that end. And so in some way, I think he's passed him up. And so those are three two-way players that you hope you don't need, but right now they're contributing in ways. But the person we got to talk about is Mr. Jordan Hawkins. Okay, listen. We were very nervous that he would not play early in the season because of his defensive efficiency. Well, he was forced to play because CJ out, Trey's out, and the rest of the Pelicans are out, right? And this guy, I keep saying, I've never seen a rookie this confident. Like, even Ant Edwards, who doesn't lack confidence at all. Jordan Hawkins was calling for the ball in his opening debut in the Pelicans route. I've never seen that before. And every game he gets more and more confidence, to the point where, like you and I talked about off the pot, like, when the rotation's healthy, there's some decisions that are going to be made. Like, obviously you got the starting five. And then after that, like, you got a lot of players that probably should be playing. But if you got Trey and Najee and Jose and Larry and Jordan Hawkins, like, someone, it's a numbers game.
You haven't even said Matt Ryan, the game breaker.
Someone is not going to be playing minutes, right? And so there's going to be some decisions that have been made. But I'm at the point where, I mean, Jordan Hawkins won't be the one who is losing minutes. So it's going to have to be someone else. What have your impressions been of the rookie so far? Because he's been literally the best. I think he's hit, as far as a draft pick, better than the Pelicans' last, I don't know, 10, 12 draft picks in a row. Like, even Zion, he was hurt at the beginning, right? He couldn't do that. Jordan Hawkins already has a 30-point game and a 25-point games, and we haven't even gotten to December. So what have your thoughts been of the rookie and how he's been just so impressive so far?
Well, we did a highly produced show in Nick in the studio at Nick's house, talking about this guy, man, talking about how this guy just has something that the Pelicans had never had in their jersey, right? Just the mentality that he had. He has a cornerback's mentality at shooting guard. Like, I don't give a damn what happens. This shot might miss all the goal, but the next one is going up. You best believe it. And the next one is going up, and the next one is going up. And I think that, his ability to just be confident in his shot has earned him the trust of guys like Zion, like Brandon Ingram, like JV, like CJ. Like, those guys look for Jordan now. Like, there's a couple of plays where Jordan's running, like, dribble handoff down screen, and, like, people are watching because this is his play. Like, it's not like, oh, this is just we doing this randomly because we had to get some offense going. Like, the set play is for Jordan to come off, and people are looking for him. People are looking for him in rebounds, and I talked about this earlier. That is the mark of a role player that is going to be very, very effective for you. When your star players don't have to look for him because they know exactly where he's going to be. And Jordan hunts the three-point line like no other rookie in this league and right now. Like, he is the premier shooter as a rookie in the league right now. And I think as time goes on, like, he had a rough preseason, a rough summer league. In the preseason, you didn't see quite to this level. And, I said it. you don't be that great of a shooter and forget, right? The court doesn't change. The people on the court from college to the NBA to summer league, like people get bigger, people get faster, people get more skillful, but like the court doesn't change. And so you should still be able to shoot. And it's just the old adage of shooters, right? You just need to see one go in. And Jordan had one good game early in the season where he hit a couple of threes and it just took off from there, right? He was like, okay, I have to shoot it like this now instead of like this. I hit it and it's just been automatic, right? He's had some games where he's had like some off games, but even then he's still contributing, right? He's a really good rebounder for a guard. Yes. And, you know, he's still contributing in ways with he's starting to get, we saw it in the Mavs game. He's starting to get some of those reputation fouls where people know we cannot let him get going. So they're closing out on him, and he's starting to use that, right? He's starting to draw fouls, draw 3-point opportunity fouls, and I mean that is a guy that is fully in control of his offense and things. And again, go back to my favorite attribute of a human being: self-awareness. You are on the floor to shoot. We saw this with Trey. Trey had to get to there, right? Like, I should shoot the ball more. You didn't have to do that with Jordan. Jordan knows exactly why he got drafted in the lottery. He knows exactly why he's in the NBA. He knows exactly how he's going to make a lot of money, and that's by shooting threes and getting them up and beating people down the floor. That's been the most impressive thing for me, is that he's beating people down the floor, and you see Jordan Hawkins as a rookie with Zion, Brandon Ingram, CJ on the floor, and you're like, how does he have 6 shots in the first quarter? Well, that's because he's beating everybody down the floor, and you have to hit him because he's wide open. And, you know, once he gets wide open, that's cash money. So, I mean, Jordan Hawkins has been a revelation. He's been better than we could have expected. I think that there is a really bright future. I love that Willie is starting to tie him and Zion, their minutes together. I think they should be on the floor together as much as possible as they continue to grow their chemistry and things. And, you know, you have to double Zion. Somebody's got to be open. And if it's Jordan Hawkins, you might as well just go ahead and run down and put 3 up on the board.
Yeah, I mean, to me, obviously the shooting has been remarkable for a team that was deprived of shooting outside of Trey and CJ. Now you got somebody challenging Trey for the technical foul free throw. Like, this guy, his game translates. You talk about getting the fouls on 3-pointers. That's what he was doing in college. Like, a lot of the things he was doing in college, he's doing. He was the reason why we like this draft pick so much is that he was the best player on that UConn team, and he didn't dominate the ball. And now he's on the Pelicans team where he doesn't dominate the ball. He just catches and shoots. And so the fit was always there. But it's also the other part, just like we said back then. Like, he'd be trying people at the rim. Like, this is a slighter frame guy, and he is trying to dunk on centers. And even on the defensive end, he's not backing down from challenges. Like, he is probably the lightest guy on the court by a lot. But still, he's not backing down from challenges on deep. He's going for blocks and things like that. And, like, that's the type of thing you want to see from a 2 guard. So he's just been extremely impressive to me. When Trey and Jordan Hawkins on the court together, I don't know what you do as a defense. You just gonna have to make some bad decisions. But
and hopefully my dog man Ryan gets him, because he really is a game breaker. That guy gets in the game and he hit like this Mavs game. I truly think he beat the Mavs because he came in. The game was close and like. He hit like 4 straight threes back to back to back to back. They called a timeout, and that was it. Like, the game went from like a 7-point game to like an 18-point game, and the route was on. And so Matt Ryan, I just want to show out, give him some love. He is the game breaker. When you put him in and he hit those 3 back to back to back threes, and the lead goes from 7 to 20 quick, I think that again, some decisions are going to have to be made.
Right. The last thing about it, obviously, before we get out of here, is the Pelicans are still 5-6. So you got some work to do to get back to where you want to be in terms of being one of those top 4 teams in the West. But with the Nuggets coming up and the Timberwolves coming up and the Kings coming up, and you play the Sixers this month, like, it doesn't get easier. So what would be some keys in your perspective for them to turn it around, build off the win versus the Mavs? You got 5 more games at home. How do they turn it around and more consistently and build some momentum as they continue through the season?
First things first, they got to play with pace. I think you saw the difference in, and we'll see if this was a James Borrego. Somebody asked me that on Twitter. It's a really good question. We'll see if this was a James Borrego, like, okay, we're doing my offense now, and then we go back to something different when Willie gets back on Friday. We'll see if it's a different, but they have to play with pace. The Pelicans were flying up and down the floor against the Mavs in that play-in tournament in that second game. I think that is the way to kind of defend the fact that there's not a lot of defense being played right now, because listen, the Kings and the Pacers too are putting like 120, 130. Now 100 and winning because they're outscoring people and they're playing with pace and they're pushing it. And I think you saw the game plan, right? I do think that's how you beat the Mavs in particular, is running Luka run, making Kyrie run. I do think that's how you beat the Mavs in particular, but I think that you see enough success from when the Pelicans do it to make it a priority moving forward. Make Jokic run, right? Beat Jokic down the floor, play some of the small ball. Listen, you're not going to guard him, whether it's JV, whether it's Larry Nance, EJ Liddell, whoever. None of them are going to guard Jokic well. So the best thing you can do, the best way to defend Jokic is to make him play defense. Get him running up and down the floor. Get him in some of those fast breaks where the ball didn't touch the ground, right? It hit the rebounder, the relay passer hits the cutter or hits the shooter, and ball doesn't touch the ground. I think that they need to continue to get the three, right? Shoot as many threes as possible. If it's Jordan Hawkins, if it's Matt Ryan, if it's Jeremiah Robinson Earl catching and shooting. Brandon Ingram, the Mavs against the Mavs, the Pels ran a play for Brandon Ingram to catch and shoot three, a down screen where he caught a clean, wide open three, and he made it. Run a couple more plays for Brandon Ingram to do that and encourage him to take them. You can't pass up on wide open shots if you keep getting them over and over again. So I think that shoot as many threes as possible, play with pace, and continue to get behind Herb defensively, right? Like, let Herb do his defensive things, but you have to make sure that you're supplementing him. Don't have him on the island by himself. As great as a defender he is, the first play of the game against the Mavericks, that second game, Zion was hedging. Soon as Luka called the screen, Zion hedged over for a double. Don't supplement his defense. Don't leave him on the island. As great of a defender he is, some of these players, De'Aaron Fox is really fast. Jokic, I'm sure Herb is going to be switched on to Jokic eventually. Like, you can't just have him by himself, fighting for himself. Supplement the defense by using hedges and rotate and helping the helper, but you can't let him do it by himself. So play with pace, get more threes up, and supplement your best defensive player by putting in schemes to help on defense, to help make sure that these players are seeing more than one body every time they get the ball at the top of the key.
Right. The other thing that you mentioned in that is they need to hunt their mismatches. The beauty of having a deep team with a lot of guys who have different skill set is that every game, to your point, there's certain ways to beat the Mavericks. Well, when you play the Nuggets, you might have to play a different way. They need to lean into that, because a lot of times the Pelicans are like, this is what we're going to do no matter what, and then the other team just game plans against that, right? And instead of making an adjustment or doing something different, the Pels just beat their head against the wall. Hunt your mismatches. Like, they're gonna try to put Aaron Gordon on Zion. Try to get him off of Zion. Like, those type of things that other teams do, the Pels need to implement some of that as well. But most importantly, when the Pelicans value the basketball, good things happen. And I think if the more consistently they can do that and limit the turnovers, the better that will be. So it starts tomorrow versus the Nuggets. Again, the Pelicans were up big on the Nuggets the first time around in Denver, and then the Nuggets, similar to the Warriors, came out and punched them in the mouth in the third quarter, and that was the end of that. So what are the keys to the Pelicans continuing and starting a win streak at home versus Denver tomorrow?
Gotta attack Jokic. The only way to defend him really is to make him play defense. I mean, he is just too good. He's playing at too high of a level offensively to kind of guard him, right? You double him, he hits the shooters. You don't double him. He's too big for your smaller players. He's too skilled for JV. So you have to make him play defensively, right? Get him in pick and roll. See if you could get him in drop coverage, guarding Zion coming down the floor, guarding Brandon Ingram down the floor, get him in foul trouble, right? He is the head of the snake. Jamal Murray hasn't played, and the Nuggets don't give a damn because they have Jokic doing Jokic things. And so even in a loss against the Rockets, I think he had like 39, 21, and 11, which is just like, you can't do that on 2K with 12-minute rookie quarter. So it's just, come on, man. But I think you just have to defend him. And then on the offensive end, play with pace. Get up and down the floor. Get those guys running. You're not going to be able to bully ball Aaron Gordon with Zion. It's just not going to happen. He's just one of those guys that's uniquely athletic and uniquely big enough to at least make Zion work. And so you have to do other things. You can't just use a Zion, bully ball. You talked about different ways to beat different people. Attack Jokic, attack the smaller guys, right? The smaller guys that they have on the floor. And don't get into that run where one of those bench players, whether it's Gillespie or Brown, don't let those guys come in and
rookie.
Or Strawther, right? Don't let none of those guys come in and outplay the second line, right? There's with guys coming back, Herb coming back, Jordan Hawkins is now on the bench. You got Matt Ryan coming in, shooting the ball well. Like, those guys have to outplay that Nuggets bench, and I think that they can get a win. The same way it looked like they were dead in the water coming into that second Mavs game. I think that they now have a sense of, we kind of got this, at least a little bit corrected. Let's not slip up and let this slip away from us moving forward.
Right. The blueprint is there. You play with energy, you play with effort, and you always got a shot. So that's all we got for you today. Again, we appreciate you rocking with it. We know it's been a while, but we're back at it. What you got left for the people, Garrick?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give somebody a smile today. I want to give a quick shout out to Theo, man. So if you've been to the Pelicans games, you know that Theo is the guy that keeps the crowd rocking, the energy. He's trying to get to NBA All-Star. I talked to him at the game. He's trying to get to the NBA All-Star game, and I think the way that he can get that done, he's done a lot of stuff, right? He's done it for the NCAA tournament. He's done Tulane games. He's done a lot of stuff, right? He's he's at Saints games, one of the hardest working men in showbiz. So if you can go on X, on Twitter, his Twitter name is @Theo_Mitchell. Go like his pinned tweet so that the NBA recognizes that, he's one of the best doing his job, so we can get him to NBA All-Star, because I think he deserves it. He's been putting on for the team in some of his darkest days, keeping some of that energy up. That Mavs blowout at home, he was fighting for his life. I'm talking about the one when the Pels were on the wrong side of the blowout. Right. He was fighting for his life, but he always keeps he always maintains the energy. So I just want to give him a shout out and see if we could get some people to go ahead and like his pin tweet. So that's @Theo_Mitchell on X. Go like his pin tweet and let him know that NO Basketball sent you. With that being said, follow myself @Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother @Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page @NO Basketball, no E. That's on X. That's on Instagram. Anyway, you get your social media. And like the episode below, subscribe to New Orleans.basketball. We'll see you guys next time.